Every year during draft season, a few of the biggest teams typically dominate the first round. But what about the smaller schools? I was curious about the guys picked in the first round from schools that don't necessarily scream first round pick factory, like North Dakota State's Trey Lance or UT Chattanooga's Cole Strange from recent draft classes. These two aren't necessarily the best examples of players working out from these smaller schools, but there has to be some success, right? So I'll be looking at the past 10 draft classes, excluding the most recent 2024 class, as they've only had 1 year to prove themselves. And I don't like judging players solely on their rookie years. Learned that the hard way as a Patriots fan with Mr. McCorkle. So we'll just exclude that one and go the 10 before that. To define small schools, I'll be setting the parameter of being in a conference outside of the Power 4 or 5. So Power 4 now, Power 5 from a few years ago. So any school in Division 3, Division 2, the FCS, or in the American, Mountain West, Conference USA, MAC, or the Sun Belt. We'll start by looking through the draft classes from 2014 to 2023. That gives us a nice 10-year window where I feel like not too much has changed in the scope of college football. Obviously, things change every year, but the small schools then are still small schools now, generally. So in 2014, we see Khalil Mack taken 5th overall by the Raiders out of Buffalo, which is a MAC school, so that is a small school. That was a massive hit for the Raiders. Later in that draft, we saw another MAC school in Northern Illinois produce Jimmy Ward, who's taken 30th overall by the 49ers. And while he wasn't like a smash hit, an all-star player or anything like that, he was a quality player for them for 9 years, logging 79 starts along from that time. So I'll consider him a success. And in 2014, we're looking pretty hot. We're 2 for 2 for small school success stories. Then before we get to 2015, I want to give Jason Verrett a shout out. He went to TCU. They joined the Big 12 in 2012, so he technically misses out on the list because they were in a Power 5 conference when he got drafted, but he was playing. They were playing in the Mountain West Conference the year he committed, and he played in the Mountain West Conference, I believe, for a year. So he does deserve a shout out, but he's not going to hit the list of small school players. So the 2015 draft class gives us just one name, and that's UConn's Byron Jones, taken at 27 by the Cowboys. He looked promising, and he was the one that set the broad jump record at the combine. He was an athletic freak. But unfortunately, injuries derailed his career. He never quite panned out. He had a Pro Bowl, so I guess he could be a successful pick. I'm going to leave that up to you guys. So let me know if you think Byron Jones was a good pick for the Cowboys, a successful pick from a small school. But for now, I'm going to consider him a miss. So that means that small schools went 0 for 1 in 2015. The 2016 draft class started off red hot for the small schools. North Dakota State's Carson Wentz went at 2nd overall, and then went cold until the end of the first round, where we saw Memphis's Paxton Lynch and Louisiana Tech's Vernon Butler go at 26 and 30. It's hard to say again on Wentz if he's a hit or a miss, but seeing as though he was a QB taken 2nd overall and they drafted a replacement pretty soon after that, even if it was due to injury, I'm gonna call it a miss. Again, you can speak your piece down in the comments if you believe that Carson Wentz was not a miss. Paxton Lynch, very clearly a miss. Don't think there's going to be any pushback on that. And Vernon Butler didn't get a second contract in Carolina. He only had 9 starts in 4 years there. So I'll call him a miss as well. 2016 went 0 and 3. And that is not hurting, or that is not helping the record of the small schools. But we move on. Western Michigan's Corey Davis led off the small schools in 2017. His name was called at 5th overall to the Titans. And then at 13, the Cardinals took Temple's Hassan Reddick, and those were the only 2 small school first rounders this year. Corey Davis was hyped up, but he was a pretty big miss for the Titans. And Hassan Reddick is kind of a more interesting story. He was never quite properly utilized in Arizona, but made 2 straight Pro Bowls in his 2 years with the Eagles. So if for no other reason than giving the small schools another victory, I'm calling him a hit. I think that it was largely due to misuse, and he actually did pan out when he was used correctly. So I'm not going to call him a miss, despite the pick, I guess, being bad for the Cardinals because he never panned out for them. But anywho, in 2018, Josh Allen, our savior, was drafted at 7th overall out of Wyoming. Marcus Davenport out of UTSA at 14, Leighton Vander Esch at 19 out of Boise State, and Rashad Penny at 27 out of San Diego State. So that's four small school first rounders this year. Big draft class. Josh Allen, obvious hit. We see what he's done this year, and in since he was drafted, really. But Marcus Davenport, Leighton Vander Esch, and Rashad Penny didn't quite live up to their expectations. Davenport never seemed to get his footing in New Orleans, and he never played a full season either. He was constantly injured, so I'll consider him a miss. Vander Esch is a very interesting one. He had an electric rookie year, made the Pro Bowl, but he retired already due to repeated neck injuries. So 6 years into his career, he's done. It's hard to call him a success, even though, again, it is injury related. I'm going to call him a miss. I've been doing that. I will continue to do that. But if you want to disagree with me, please do it in the comments below. And then Rashad Penny, one of the more efficient running backs I've ever seen. He also never got his injuries in check and retired before this past season. So we'll call this 2018 class 1 of 4 as hits go. Then, as I was scrolling through the 2019 draft class, I actually didn't see any small schools until I noticed Alabama State had Titus Howard taken by the Texans at 23. And I don't think he's been a real standout success for the Texans, and their O-line has had its issues. He did get a second contract, and he started 16 games for them this past season. For a later first rounder, I'll call him a hit, but Texans fans disagree with me if you want in the comments. And something I want to bring up now, I compiled this list by scrolling through Pro Football Reference draft listings and looking at the colleges that players were taken out of. I am not an avid college football fan. I'm not huge into it. So if there were any players that I missed that were taken out of smaller schools that I just assumed were bigger schools, or if I just completely missed them, drop them down in the comments. I'll add them to the tally. And again, I apologize if I missed anybody. Then we move on to 2020, a second straight year with just one small school first rounder. This time it is Utah State's Jordan Love, taken by the Packers at 26. This was a very strange pickup at the time for the Packers. They still had Aaron Rodgers. He was coming off an MVP or something like that. And he was playing super efficient football. There was no reason for them to draft a quarterback. Probably should have taken receiver. But in the long run, it panned out. They have their starter for the future. Say what you want about his recklessness, I guess, passing the ball, but he is a quality starter in the league that they got in the late first round. So that's a good pickup in my book. Call it 1 for 1 in 2020. Then in 2021, this draft class is one that we hold near and dear here at Franchise Tagged because we retrospectively graded the entire class to put our names on the map, and those were our first ever videos. We went through, graded the entire draft class and the teams in it. But now it's time to dissect it in a different way. Shout out to Zach Wilson from BYU, but not a small school per my requirements. So we started number 3 with Trey Lance from North Dakota State going to the 49ers, and then Zaven Collins at 16 from Tulsa going to the Cardinals, and that was it for 2021. I think it's pretty easily 0 for 2. Trey Lance never panned out and cost the 49ers 3 firsts. And while Zaven Collins has started quite a bit at many different positions for the Cardinals, he hasn't produced much at any of the positions that he started at, and the Cardinals defense is kind of a void of talent. So it's not surprising to see a guy picked in the mid first that can play multiple positions at any sort of level would be valued there. I guess except for Isaiah Simmons, but we won't go there. Then the 2022 class, we wait until way later in the first round to get names off the board. But at pick 19, Trevor Penning from Northern Iowa went to the Saints. Then Tyler Smith from Tulsa to the Cowboys at 24, and Cole Strange at 29 to the Patriots out of UT Chattanooga. Trevor Penning is a guy the Saints need to replace. He's been a liability on the O-line basically since he was drafted. For that reason, I'll call him a miss. Tyler Smith, complete opposite, smash hit for the Cowboys. Great pick. And then Cole Strange has been mediocre and injured, so I'll call him a miss, even though he may be good when he's on the field. We just haven't seen him on the field enough. And in 2-3 seasons since then, you'd kind of hope to see something. Then the final year we were going to take a look at is going to be 2023. I said we weren't going to look at the most recent draft. However, there are no small schools that were taken in the first round in 2023. I didn't think, or I thought this could happen. Then I got this far and I was like, maybe it won't. Maybe we'll be good. But unfortunately, it did happen. And even though, like I said, I said I wouldn't do it, I'm going to look at the 2024 class and find a small school there just so we can have 10 draft classes to look at without going way back in the past. So in 2024, the most recent draft, we had Quinyon Mitchell out of Toledo, who had a solid season starting for the Eagles at corner. He's been pretty good. I'll call him a hit. We'll call it 1 of 1. And I guess on a technicality, we could count Talise Fuaga out of Oregon State because the Pac-12 is no longer a power conference. However, they were in the Pac-12 when it was a power conference, when it was the Power 5 instead of the Power 4, and he was there during that. So it feels wrong to count Oregon State as a small school immediately after the Pac was disbanded, despite it, not really being a small school before. So similar to TCU and Jason Verrett back in 2015, I'm going to not count Talise Fuaga in 2024. Just to wrap things up, small school first round picks went 8 for 20. So 20 small school first rounders in the past, I guess 11 draft classes, even though one didn't have any. And 8 of them were what I would call successes. Without a great point of reference for what the general hit rate is on first rounders, I don't really have like a huge revelation to say, yes, take those small school first rounders. If they're from a small school and being projected in the first, they're a surefire hit. But I also can't say avoid them because they're not going to hit, because we did see some success stories. I will say 8 of 20, which is 40%, seems like a pretty standard hit rate, but from a much smaller sample size than the big schools. So I don't think I'm super swayed either way. I really just thought it would be fun to go back and take a look at how these players turned out and what the small schools have produced over the years. So I am planning on doing a follow-up to this video on first round factories that would be like Michigan in recent years, Alabama basically since Saban went there, and other schools like that, schools that are perennially, like every year they're putting multiple first rounders into the league. So if you would like me to go through something like that in a similar style, I definitely am very willing to do so. Just drop your thoughts on it in the comments down below, and I will probably be doing that somewhere in the semi-near future. But with all of that, and with asking for your opinions on these players that I may have said were hits and weren't, or may have said were misses and actually were decent players, let me know your thoughts on those down below, and drop any other suggestions for videos like this, and let me know if, like I said, if I missed anybody that was drafted in the past 10, 11 drafts that was from a small school that I did not consider a small school, then drop that down in the comments below. But with that, that's all I got for you today. Deuces.